Well, thank you guys for coming out this morning. I'm Steve Harvill. I own a company called Creative Ventures. We are a strategy-based company, which means we create strategies and then companies come to us to access the ability to utilize and implement the strategies within what they do. This is my 43rd year of Creative Ventures. I'm winding down as I get a little older. We were talking about projects now. I think this year I did 12, and I think next year I'll only do 10 as I'm kind of gearing down the travel aspect of what I do. But we get to work with unbelievable companies. Everybody from Apple to Zappos at one point or another, we've probably done some work with in about every industry you can imagine, from robotics to chemical production to hospitality, food and beverage, athletic stuff. So we get to see unbelievable wide swath of how business is done in different phases and different types of industries. Craig's got copies of my second book. I'll be happy to sign all of those for you and devalue them for you immediately out of the gate as you go to sell them on eBay for those things. And that particular book did shockingly well, considering I had no idea what I was doing or how to write a book. It became a bestseller and was really successful and led to the next one, which I have on entrepreneurism coming out. So that's what we're going to do today. Today is a strategy session. It's not necessarily a sales session. And so I want to talk to you about the difference between analog methodology and digital methodology. So if you'd open your little envelopes and take everything in the envelope out, you will not need, Jason, you will not need your iPad. You will not need a phone. Everything that you need to get through this session is in that envelope. Here's the first deal. The brain loves analog writing. It loves to look down. It loves to see the muscle motion of what you're writing, and it registers staggeringly different than doing anything digitally. And it's a biological fact. So you can go through all these different elements and things electronically, but the brain is hungering for an analog approach. So we are an analog company. Almost everything we do in old school analog elements to it. So you have your I know you have your notebooks, and I'm not going to talk badly about notebooks, but I'm going to talk badly about notebooks. And let me give you the reason why. And it took me a number of years to learn this. I have in my office in Austin probably 100 notebooks lined up on two shelves that I've kept ideas that I've just stumbled upon, things I found interesting from the time I started the company 43 years ago. But if you were to say, Steve, would you go get the notebook that has the notes on NASA in it when you did the NASA project? I'd look up at those notebooks and I'd go, I have no idea which notebook that's in. I don't know where that is in there. And so if I ask, let's say you filled this notebook up and I asked you, hey, you know that idea that you had on the Valero, could you take me through that again? You would open your notebook and you would have to do this. Haven't found it yet. Haven't found it yet. So when I was introduced to the writing aspect, we were at this big writers conference, and there was a guy who got up and said, I've written all my books using 5x8 index cards. And I went, what? And he goes, and he took you through this little process. This was like 20 years ago, maybe. And I went, oh my God, that makes so much more sense, because you can take a 5x8 index card, take notes on it, and then primitively file it by the content. So that I have now little boxes with every platform that we have. Let's say it's on the client experience. That's called our Dazzling Blue platform. And I want to update it. Somebody's hired me to write a magazine article on the client experience. I just go to my box, I open it, pull out the cards that say Dazzling Blue, and there's all my notes from the stuff I've collected for the last 3 years in little index cards. It sounds staggeringly primitive, but I can put my hand on any idea just like that. I fill out about 50 a week, maybe more in my research and the stuff that I find interesting and do. Every Friday, they get filed by their different subject matter, and I start fresh on a Monday. It has changed the way I learn. It's changed the way I've done everything. So today, as an introduction to that, you have 5x8 index cards in your packet, and you have the perfect tool, which is a pencil. Pencils are about 3 cents each. When we were doing a project early on for Apple, when Apple first came out with the Apple Pencil, they gave a bunch of us the Apple Pencil to use on our iPad, right? I lost it in O'Hare Airport in, probably 48 hours after receiving it. I went to use it in the Admirals Club. I looked around, it was gone. That was a $120 Apple Pencil gone. I can buy a lot of wooden pencils for that. So we do everything that we do is done on an index card basis. I'm going to introduce that to you today. You can use your notebook if you'd like, but that's what that's in there for. So we're going to, stuff you find interesting today, you're going to take it in an analog format instead of a digital format. Now let me talk to you briefly about the brain. There's people who say, I read a quote recently that said, we know more about the bottom of the ocean than we know about the human brain. And I thought, well, that's not even close to being true. We know a ton about the brain. We know a lot about how it works. It's a mass of chemical and electrical reactions. That's what the brain does all the time. It's electrical, which sounds weird in the sense that it's in your body like a firefly has its electrical aspect. The brain is like that, and it's recording stuff all the time through these charges. And then there's tiny little chemical exchanges that are going on in the brain. And it happens like this almost your entire life, meaning that as long as the brain is healthy, you can learn forever. And it will make neural pathways forever in it. So we're going to warm it up this morning using the red envelope test. So don't open your red envelopes yet, but let me explain what's in there. There's a general interest test in there of 10 questions. The object is to get all 10 questions correct, right? You will do the first phase of this by yourself. Don't talk to your neighbor. Don't show your neighbor anything. You'll have about 2 minutes to answer as many of them as you can successfully. Got it? Okay, open them up. Let me get my iPhone stopwatch going, and I'll give you 2 minutes to get as many correct as you can. And stopwatch, start. And stop. Turn them over. Turn them over. Now, I'm going to give you 90 seconds, and you can ask a person adjacent to you to help. So Brian, you can ask Irv, or you can ask Craig to help you. You can ask Brian to help you, or you can ask Nate to help you. Just the people next to you, no further than that. So, Drew, you cannot ask Garrett a question. Got it? You wait a minute, I'll give you 90 seconds. What's the object of the drill? To get all 10 correct. That is the object of the drill. Hold on. And go. Stop. Turn them over. Turn them over. Last phase. Last phase. You may ask anyone in the room for help except me. Anyone out in the room for help. The object is get all 10 correct. So now you'll have 2 minutes to ask anyone in the room for help on it. Okay? Anyone in the room. Yes?
Just once? Or no, we can talk to everybody?
You can talk to everybody for 2 minutes in an effort to get them all correct. Wait a second. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Ready? Stop. Reset. Go. 2 minutes.
Number one, anybody
And stop. You should listen to Irv. Irv has a lot of right answers, as Irv was saying, shouting answers out. So here's what happens to the brain when you do this exercise. It creates what's called a neural path. Now, the brain will create neural pathways your whole life. And you can do really simple things to create a neural pathway, a new neural pathway, like for 5 days in a row, brush your teeth with your opposite hand. If you're right-handed, brush your teeth with your left hand. In 5 days, the brain will create a neural pathway. It'll feel awkward for 3 days. After the next 2 days, you'll kind of get it, and the brain will say, that pathway's there. And it'll keep that pathway forever in your head. Now, there are pathways that are weak and strong. Things that you do regularly that don't require thought, like let's say you shaved this morning, right? And you're right-handed, you probably started on the left side of your face, or wherever you did. You've done that over and over again to create a strong neural pathway where you don't think about it. You don't even think about which hand you're going to use. The pathway is that strong. But you can create new ones all the time by shifting small elements in the brain. And if you don't do that, if you're not actively creating new neural pathways, the brain atrophies like a muscle. It is one of the strangest organs in the body because you can exercise it. So Dr. Brian Greene, he's the happiness professor at Harvard. His class is a psychology class. He and I were doing a project together, and he asked me, he said, Steve, what do you do to exercise your brain? And I went, well, I'm not sure I don't understand the question. He said, I said, well, I read 2 books a week. And he said, how long have you done that? I said, God, since I was probably in grammar school. He said, it doesn't count, that pathway's done. I said, I'm a guitar player, so I practice, and so how long have you played the guitar? I said, oh, since I was about 12. Doesn't matter. Neural pathway's done. And I said, then I don't understand the question. And he goes, do you do puzzles? And I said, no, I don't do puzzles. Like, you mean like crossword puzzles and stuff? He said, subscribe to USA Today when you get home. Do the Monday crossword puzzle by yourself. And then every day start to do another crossword puzzle until the brain figures out how to do them. And so I said, I can do that. And I started doing that. And then I read some more stuff that he did to create new neural pathways. This is creating new neural pathways because you're thinking about items and elements that you don't really know the answer to, right? And so the exercise, not only does it get you going and have fun and things like that, it creates a new neural pathway in your brain. And you need to be creating those all the time for brain strength. So you need to do that. Who's the only performer inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 3 times? No, it's not Paul McCartney. It's not Mick Jagger. You all, yes, it is. It's Eric Clapton. Very good.
Wow.
And here's an even better Rock and Roll Hall of Fame question. Only one performer has been inducted into the Hall of Fame twice in the same night. Twice in the same night.
Springsteen? No.
No. Stephen Stills for Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, and as an independent one. So that's the going. So it's Clapton. Answers in the room. Number 2 is a plural question. It's planets, plural. Which 2 planets spin a different direction than all the other planets in our solar system? If I'll take one answer that's correct, and you have a 1 out of 8 chance of getting it right. Neptune. No, not Neptune.
Saturn.
Not Saturn.
Venus.
Venus is 1. Venus is 1. And Uranus is the other one. Used to be Uranus, but now it's Uranus. I don't know. People pronounce it. Those are the 2 that spin the different direction. Why did that happen? Somewhere along the early development in the solar system, something smacked those 2 planets. And it hit them hard enough that it actually changed the rotation of the planet. So they rotate different than the rest of the 6 planets in the solar system. Largest desert? No.
Antarctica.
Yes, Antarctica. World leader that wrote all that stuff and won the Nobel Prize for Literature, Irv? Who is it? Churchill. It is Winston Churchill. Only mammal that can fly? A bat. How many people have walked on the moon, Irv? 12. 12 people have walked on the moon. It would always be an even number because they went down in 2s. The 3rd astronaut stayed up in the capsule circling for the reuniting of the lunar excursion module. Fruit most eaten in the world? Banana. Ancient people invented the toothbrush? Jason? Egypt. Drew. It was Drew. Egyptians did. 150 billion, most expensive thing built? Irv?
Space station.
Yep, the International Space Station. And I don't think anyone got the last one. I didn't hear the answer out there.
The Walker Prize.
No, the Walker Cup, named after Walker. No. She is the only woman to win the Medal of Honor. Yeah, only one person. And the reason being, why would she be the only woman to win it?
Combat?
It's a combat medal. And in the Civil War, women fought for both the Confederate and the Union side. She was a Union spy and surgeon. And by the way, the vast majority of medals of honor are given to Civil War soldiers. That's the vast majority of the Medal of Honors. It is not the Congressional Medal of Honor. It is the Medal of Honor. It is awarded by Congress, but it's referred to just as the Medal of Honor. Yes, and that is true.
On the current wars, they're not giving out the Medal of Honor?
I'm sorry?
On current wars?
Oh, yeah. In fact, there was just like 6 months ago a Medal of Honor given out for a Marine for an action in Fallujah. So yeah, they still give it out.
I thought they made a movie about a woman who got the Medal of Honor.
I don't know if there's a movie about Walker or not. She was an unbelievable.
This was like in Afghanistan.
No, she's the only. No, she's the only one. Only female ever to get it. She was a total badass. I mean, when you read about her, you go, oh my gosh, she was certainly worth it. So there you go. You've warmed up your brain. You're ready to roll. Here we go. This is a meeting today about strategy. It's not a sales meeting. I don't do a ton of work in sales. We do almost all of our work based on strategy and strategic ideas. So I'll give you a quick me story. When I was a kid, to get my surfing money, I sold suits at Sears. Sears and Roebuck. I was a suit salesman. I was a horrible suit salesman, but the tailor who sat in this little back room for 30 years, his name was Charlie. Charlie took a liking to me, and he took me out and he showed me how to look at somebody immediately and go 42 regular, 44 long. He taught me about how to mark the trousers and the jacket with the chalk and all this stuff. So I learned all of this stuff from Charlie. But I wasn't good at selling stuff necessarily, but I was really good at strategy, even at that age. So I recognized something. I was getting a commission based on the sales number that I put into the sales thing. I was 6064. I can still remember the number. Every time 6064, I was commissioned on it. So then I thought about all the people that were working around the suit department that were non-commissioned. They were salaried people. So I went up to them and I said, anytime you make a sale, just put 6064 in instead of your number. And, you know, that way you don't care about it, and I'll take you guys all out to dinner every month. I'll take the whole crew out to a big Mexican dinner every month. This was in Southern California. So my commission started going. I was making a fortune as a teenage kid ready to buy his next board, just waiting to buy his next board, making a fortune doing this elements like that. So the Sears management came down and they said, you're the #1 salesperson in the whole area. And I said, well, thanks, you know, I appreciate that. They said, we'd like to put you in the management training program. And I said, well, this isn't really my career path, you know, I don't think. And they said, well, either that or you're making more money than anybody that works here, including upper management, they told me. So I was being punished for being successful with my strategic approach to it. So I was always good at strategy, bad at sales. So here's the deal about strategy. We started it with a little homework assignment that we sent out. And I just want to go over, okay. I want to go over those things. So can somebody just tell me, and I am not intimately familiar with selling the Valero Texas Open, so I need to learn a little from you guys when we do this. Tell me, what do you think when you're talking to somebody about it, what are you selling? What is the thing you're selling? Because every sale is around a service or an item. Those are the only two things people buy. You don't buy anything else. It's either a hard item, you're buying a car, or you're buying a washer and dryer, or you're buying a new shirt, or you're buying a service from somebody who fixes your air conditioner or flies you to New York or whatever the element is from it, right? So it's not a complicated aspect. There's only two things. But what are you selling? What is the thing you're selling?
For me, I think it was an experience.
Yeah. I also think it can be different based on who you're selling to. Sometimes they're not the experience at all. It's just an impact or visibility. So I think it's one or the other.
Experience, then there's personalized, which we'll talk about.
I put opportunities to strengthen relationships. That's what.
Tell me about that.
I just feel like it's a great opportunity for networking and to connect with people, whether it be your clients or just other clients that are prospective clients. So that's kind of what I.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing because it's a nebulous element. So I just am interested in what you think about when you're selling it. Somebody else tell me, what are you selling to somebody? Garrett, what are you selling to somebody?
I agree with them on experience. I don't know, an experience. That's honestly what I would do.
I would say it's a relationship development as well. We talk about a lot of times when I'll go to talk to folks, they buy sell it or invite guests to a Spurs game or something like that. Maybe get 2.5, maybe 3 hours with the folks at the screen crowd. But here, if you go to the Valero Texas Open, you're going to spend an entire day with the client. It's somewhat in an intimate setting. They can walk the course, and so what they're doing is you're developing a relationship with their clients, with their employees, and you're kind of buying the trust.
So the company's really got two avenues right there. They share it with their clients for the experience, and they share it with their team for the experience.
Right.
Okay, next, Tell me a little bit about what a prospect looks like. When you're thinking about talking to somebody, what does that thing look like?
Disposable income.
Disposable income.
Local ties.
Local ties, disposable income.
I think the ties aspect is important, at least for the prospects I have.
I think it's huge.
They're trying to grow their presence here, both with prospects, but also just in the community with the nonprofit efforts and things like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say community-oriented, community values.
So somebody that's actively involved in the community. You guys, I'm sure you're aware, if you took the charitable givings of Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NHL, and the NBA and combined them, they don't equal what the PGA does in a year. Doesn't equal what the PGA does in a single year for the communities that they operate within. That is an unbelievable number. When you think about it in your head, that's kind of what that element is. So I can see certainly the prospect of somebody that's tied to the community, and this can further that tie, right? It can strengthen that tie, and it has an ancillary impact. It impacts the community as well as you having a good time at the tournament, element like that. What else does it?
I think a strong prospect, I think we need to have good relationships with them to allow for
It's
that.
personal.
Erica and Nate and Craig, this is their full-time job to sell. We have to lean on our relationships to sell.
Yeah, it's a trust-based
So,
element.
we're not doing it every day.
Yeah.
There
I think
needs to be a trust.
You're not?
I think the low-hanging fruit is people that like the game of golf.
Yeah, that's got to be up there, right? Yeah, that's got to be up there. It's what? Or
Top Golf, most of the people who go to Top Golf aren't golfers.
yeah,
They go to socialize, business meetings.
birthday parties.
Hiking.
Yep. And all of those things can happen here. Next, what barriers stop you? Because really when you're selling something like this, it's a value creation, right? You're trying to create value for it, and that's a nebulous also element. What you consider valuable and impactful is different. It differs all the time. If somebody introduces you to a brand new idea, you put that idea inside your head through whatever kind of a value element you have, right? And you're trying to determine at the end, does that idea have value to me? Here's how, let me just give you real quick how ideas work. They follow a three-part journey. It never has more than 3 parts. The first is, I get it. If you don't have I get it at the beginning of presenting an idea, of doing something like that, it goes nowhere. Nowhere. The person has to be able to understand it and connect with it. And the way that people connect fastest is if it's a simple idea, right? The more simple the idea, the faster the connection is. But if you don't get this, I do some work in financial services, and I'll follow around a sales guy as he makes his rounds, and he'll be talking to a potential investor, and he'll go through this unbelievably complicated gobbledygook of language and prospectuses and everything like that, and they'll pause at a point and they'll ask the client, potential client, are we okay? You understand where we're going with this? And the client will inevitably nod yes. And I'll turn to him and I'll say, whoa, wait a minute. This person has no idea what you're talking about. That nod is an embarrassment nod. They're embarrassed that they don't understand. They haven't asked you any question. And if you can't see that that person doesn't get it, you can leave this sales thing right now. They're done. They're not going to do anything like that. So I can't begin to tell you at the beginning of whatever element is, that is critical. It comes then to value. The next one is value. Do they value the idea? Once I understand it, does it have any value to me in it, right? That's the hardest, this is the hardest transition to make because everybody's different. Your value screen is different. You'll find, we'll go to the same movie. I'll come out and I'll say, that movie was spectacular. And you'll say, I hated every minute of that movie. And you'll go, what? Or you'll go to an art museum. You'll stand there in front of a painting, and I've done this a number of times with another person. And I'll stand there and look at it, and I'll ask the other person, what do you think? Would you hang that in your house? Would you? And they go, no, I don't think I would. I said, are you kidding me? That's a Van Gogh. You would hang a Van Gogh in your house, right? You look at it, and what do you not like about it? I don't know. I don't like the color. I don't like the... Interesting, because that to me is a breathtaking piece of art, right? It differs from everybody. It's subjective, not an objective element. So you've got to create value. And then the last element is application. can I apply the idea? And this normally happens in the context of what I do. Can I apply the idea in what I do? If I were to teach you to map the elliptic of a planet, the arithmetic is simple. Anybody in here in 1 hour could take any planet and map the elliptic to it with very simple math. But you would never use that. It would have no value to you and certainly no application, but you would get it. I could make you get it, but it has no value and you have no way to apply it. If you want an idea to stick, it has to be functional around these 3 key areas. I get it, I value it, I can apply it. That idea becomes sticky. And so when you're approaching somebody along elements of barriers and things like that, what you're really trying to do is make sure you bridge that I get it, right? So that I know what we're talking about. And I enjoy it, and you can see and sense that. And if not, you can ask. You can ask, are we okay? And then you're going to have to be able to tell as intuitive salespeople, which you all are, whether that's true or not. That's the only pathway that needs to be followed in an idea, and it's how barriers get broken. When someone gets it, they value it, and they can apply it, they're in on the idea. Works that way in any sales cycle of any kind of product or service. So what are the barriers in creating value and impact that you see when you approach somebody? Is it just getting the initial meeting?
I think it's finding the right person too, because a lot of these people don't have access to budgets. And
They're not yeah.
I have a lot of prospects that get it, value it, and can apply it, but they can't strike the check.
Yeah, they're not a decision maker. Yeah. Can they bring that to the decision maker?
Perhaps. I think I was just talking to Craig about one of my prospects is who can make that decision? I know a lot of people with this prospect will love it, they get it, they can apply it, but can they make the...
Yeah, can they call the ball? Can they...
I think 15 with the new addition of 16 tickets, I think when some of the Trailblazer are on, I think that's an awesome product at a more reasonable price than, 18 Mirandas, $500-$600 a ticket plus. The band is 400 plus, like, I don't know what it is, a ticket for 15, but, yeah, like 300 or whatever it is. I think some of it is the cost, right? My barrier for me was finding ways to show the value to someone who's never been. Because it's not a cheap way to, it's an expensive week of enjoyment. We all love it, but it's hard to show someone who's never been, never gotten to experience to say, hey, go write a $50,000 check and trust me.
Yeah, price is a barrier. Yeah. It is a barrier in everything. Yeah. There's nothing that it's not a barrier in, unless you're buying $1 smoothie from $1 Frosty from Wendy's. It's a barrier in almost everything that we do, and it's the #1 spot that negotiations begin on, right? I just bought my first new car in a long time because I'm not a car guy and I don't really care about cars. But to go in and what's the first element that you're talking to the guy about? It's not all the features. You say, let's start with, here's my budget. Here's what I can afford to do. And then the car salesman then, his job or her job is to manipulate that element into a sale. They have to manipulate that element into a sale. That's their job. You know that when you go in anyway. On elements along lines like that. So price is one of the barriers. I get that. It's the barrier in everything. What other barriers do you have as far as a sponsor goes besides pricing?
Return on investment.
The ROI?
They have the budget, but it's competing interest for where they place their budget. And then if we're talking about ROI.
Well, I think it's competition too. The other similar things that they spend their money on, Fiesta, Final Four, rodeo.
I was going to say timeline. Sometimes you talk to them just at the wrong time, so it's a barrier of budgeting, when they set budgets and when they spend it.
Yeah. And I imagine comp-wise, obviously there's a lot of stuff that goes on there. Who is it that just said, though, you get a full day together? You're not the shouting, the cheer, all of that element is you don't get the time that a golf tournament gives you. In fact, between golf and tennis, they're the two sports, individual kind of power sports that you can sit and talk to another person during for elements like that. So those are all traditional barriers, right? I mean, they're barriers. I'm sorry? Tennis sucks. Let me ask you this. You ever see a fat tennis player? You know, they're really out there. That takes a lot of conditioning to play that game. Those guys are pretty good athletes. There aren't any overweight tennis players on the court. Yeah, I was a tennis player. That's why I was supporting. Just thought I'd know. That's right. Last night when my wife and I got to the hotel, I was looking forward to watching the men's quarterfinal, one of the quarterfinal matches at the U.S. Open. But the hotel had their contract with DirecTV, and DirecTV's at war with Disney, so there was no ESPN. And I went, oh my God! One night you want it. They're still at war. They haven't settled it yet. Okay, and tell me key value points so that when you're going in there, how are you attacking this strategically? What's the attack point? Where the hell's the? When you.
I think sometimes you have to ask them what they're looking for. You have to ask if they're looking for client development, if they're looking for advertising, for branding opportunities. I think you've got to look for that a little bit. And I said it because as Craig tells me all the time, it's important to understand what they want first by asking the right questions.
Okay. What other are points, attack points? You have to have you don't go into a conversation and sell anything without attack points, or you shouldn't. You should have 3 for every element. One of our analog forms is a client call form that whenever we have a client call that's expected, either we're making it or it's coming in, we fill out this little analog form that has the 3 things we want out of the phone call. And we never go to any call of any kind, of any meeting, that we don't have the 3 things we want out of the meeting, and we don't stop until those 3 things are done. You've got it written out in front of you. You've got to make sure you do that. So our attack points we have all the time when we're discussing what a project might look like. So, you know, what are the... You've got an individual person, let's say, what do they want? That's an attack point. What are the other attack points? You have to have a benefit attack point, right?
Depending on the price one, like exclusivity, like if you're going to spend that much money, then they want to know, like, okay, am I getting, is that all the value for it with my clients all the time that I'm putting in with my clients?
Can you help them with that?
Right.
Yeah, you know, can you say, look at, if you need a little help, I'll show you how to leverage your day at this tournament as well as you can leverage it. And I'll show you where those connection points are that you'll want to be there on Thursday, you'll want to be there on Friday, and elements like that. You can help them with that, right, by creating those points for them. You could say, I can understand that. Let me show you how that'll work. And then you can actually show them how it works. If you know what your barrier points are, you can then define strategy around them. And they're traditionally the same for whatever anybody's doing. You're just trying to develop a strategic element about it. So the idea of the homework was just to get you thinking about that kind of aspect of what's going on and what are we selling. I will have a thread that weaves its way through everything that I do, and that thread is simplicity. We are experts on simplifying complex issues, and we spend at least 60% of our time on helping people simplify aspects of whatever they're doing. And so you'll always hear me talk about 3. 3 is a big deal in simplicity. If anything gets to the 4th part, the brain immediately knows it's not simple. So you have to keep things at 3. That means you've got to be diligent, and you've got to make sure that those things happen. And everything that you're going to hear today is going to have that thread run through it. So what is a strategy, and how is it developed? It's only got 3 simple parts to it. The first is whatever the idea is. And so for us here, the idea is trying to increase the attackable aspects for potential sponsors. That's the goal. That's the deal, right? That's the idea. The next thing you do is you have to have an actionable plan. So all you have is an idea. It transmits into an actionable plan. And here's the key aspect about an actionable plan. It has to have an accountable person to be effective. Planning does not work. Actions towards an idea do not work without accountable people. And you cannot have a team of 5 people accountable. It's impossible. You can have one person accountable who can build a team of 4 other people, but when I want that thing done, the accountable is who I go to. The accountable makes the idea happen. And it's better if that accountable person wants to do it, by the way, in lieu of assigning somebody accountability. But without that, the action never happens. And then the last piece of it is you simply have to be able to measure and adjust as you move towards that idea, right? You have to be able to measure it. You have to be able to adjust your measurements to it. And then you start the cycle over again. And that's it. There is no more simple way to define strategy. And we've done this aspect on this 3-part model for 40 years with every company we've ever done work with. We've created what's the initial idea. Show me what an actionable plan is. Show me how you're measuring and adjusting to that actionable plan. That's it. I don't need anything else to make it effective. And I can use that same model with you for anything, for planning a vacation, for moving, for it doesn't matter. It works for everything. So that's what we're going to do. And we're going to do a 3-part program today. I'm going to introduce a tool called a decision filter. We're going to use the decision filter as an attack point element. And that's never use yellow. Introduction, we're going to talk about the skills to connect those things. So that's kind of all we're going to do this morning. So let's start with the part 1, which is going to be identifying relationships with the potential to become a sponsor. You guys have a gazillion relationships. Not all of them are identified to become a sponsor. But today what we'd like to do is we'd like to get at least around 10 potential names of people to attack. And that's what it is. A strategy is an attack plan on it. And we're hoping to get 10. So let me talk about decision making. If you go to a company and you have the leadership team there and you ask this question, can you walk me through your decision making process? Just show it to me. Come and draw it on the board for me so I can see how you guys make decisions. You know what you'll get? Nobody standing up. They'll go, well, we take data and then we look at it and then we run it through. They can't even articulate how they make a decision. And decision making is a big deal. It's not a difficult thing to do. It is a step-by-step process. If you don't have a process, that means everybody in the company, everybody in the organization is doing something different to make a decision. And when the decision rolls down, you have no way of knowing if the decision's any good or not. If they're looking for buy-in or enrollment, 2 different concepts, right? Coming from that, it needs to be done. So all you need is a tool to help along like that. And we've used this tool and have taught it forever in companies in decision making, and we call it the decision filter. And it goes like this. You create 3 criteria. Doesn't matter what decision you're making, you have to create the criteria. These criteria are the most important part of the process because you're going to run every single idea through these 3 criteria. If you get a yes on 1, a yes on 2, a no on 3, that idea is out. That potential sponsor goes in a parking lot somewhere separate. If you get a yes on 1 and a no on 2, doesn't even get to 3, it's out. It goes into a parking lot. If I get a yes on 1, 2, and 3, it's an automatic doable. I don't have to think about it anymore. It just becomes do it. That becomes an actionable item. So this filter element kind of looks like this. If you're disciplined in your approach to this, you can create a decision filter for anything. All you have to do is be disciplined enough to kick an idea out that doesn't make it. That means that the entire aspect of its success evolves only around one thing, and that's your ability to develop the criteria. What are the right criteria for the filter? It looks kind of like this. As the ideas go down, if they make it through all 3 of these, they're automatic yeses. Anything else goes in a parking lot to be referred to later. And this is how, let's see, General Motors uses this, Apple uses it, Southwest Airlines uses it, UT Medical System uses it. It's just a very simple tool. So where does the primary aspect of your time go in using this tool? Where does your primary time go? If you were given this blank, where does the time go in using the tool? Yeah, the criteria are critical, right? They have to be the right criteria in order to do that. So we spend most of our time defining these 3 aspects before we pass any idea through them. And you know what you'll learn? As you do this more, you'll learn, I didn't word the criteria correctly. It was the wrong criteria for what the outcome I want is. But the discipline is to run every idea through it. Every idea. It kicks ideas out. It makes ideas come down to element. So if I'm defining a potential client, all I need to know are what are my criteria. And you've already given me some of them. You're selling the experience. It's a financial element. Do they have the money for it? right? There's different elements of the criteria that you have to create. I can't create them for you. I can only tell you that if you spend a little time on these three, you won't have to think about this anymore. You've already done all the thinking about it. You just have to pass the idea through it. And a lot of times people will try to jam the idea through a criteria that it doesn't fit. And you'll tell them, I dig it, you love your idea, but it's not going to happen. It can't get through this. And you've tried to jam it like this. Here, that doesn't work. It's got to get through these things. So you have to keep the idea for the criteria, you've got to keep it simple. It's got to be unbelievably simple. You cannot cram an idea through 6 paragraphs of a criteria. It's why you ever wonder why things don't get done in companies? You probably don't spend a lot of time on that. I spend a lot of time on why things don't get done. Somebody will bring you in to do a big project, they'll create this thing, you'll go back a year later, they haven't done it. So we have a radiology client who has 37 offices of medical imaging across the country, where you get your MRI, your sonogram, your x-rays, your, I don't know, whatever else they probe you with radiation for nowadays, on it, right? And so when we started with them, I went into 6 of the offices. I traveled, went in 6 of the, and I sat there like a patient, right? It was just a horrific experience. And you guys know this because when you go to the doctors, you have the exact same experience. You walk in, you kind of look around, and there's a person behind a glass window that moves. And you walk up to them, and they look up at you, and they open the little window, and they look out, and they go, yes? And you go, hi, Steve Harvill, I have a 10 a.m. appointment with Dr. Deseretti. Okay, here, fill this out. And I go, no, I did that online. She goes, no, I need you to fill it out. I need you to fill out the form. I said, but why would I? Never mind, doesn't do any good. It was just like last night at the hotel. They charge you to park your car in just an outdoor parking lot. Okay, I get it. But they want you to do all the work. They want you to scan the code, then go in and enter your license plate and make of car. I told the girl at the desk, I don't even work here. I don't understand why I have to do all of this, and then you're going to charge me $10. She goes, that's just the way we do it. I said, oh, that's not a good client experience, right? And so now they give you this thing, and they give you a clipboard, and the form on the clipboard has a pen that's attached by a chain as though it's the most valuable item in their office. There is no other item in the office that is chained to any. The computers aren't chained, the chairs aren't chained, just the pen. And so you go back and you sit down and you fill out this form that you just filled out online. It's almost identical, right? Do you have Ebola? No, I don't have Ebola. Do you have, and you're going through this whole thing, you're filling it out, right? And then you walk back up and you go, and then they look up at you again and they have to open the glass door and I go, here you go. And sometimes they'll say thank you and they go, got it, we'll let you know when you're ready. They'll close the door. And then you go back and you sit down in a crowded room that has a Sports Illustrated with Michael Jordan on the cover. That's how long the magazine's been sitting there. It's got Jordan on the cover.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you're okay with that. Yeah, okay with Michael on it. And you go, okay, you wait. And then a person opens the magic door. The magic door is over here, where all the medicine and the miracles happen behind the magic door, right? So the person opens the magic door, and they don't come over to you. They just shout your name out. They go, Harvill, Harvill. Well, come on. And you get up and you go back there, and then you have another experience back there. It's all horrible. So I tell the company, I go, your client experience is horrible. It's, legitimately horrible. So I'm going to give you a strategy that won't cost you 1 penny except our fee. And this is what you're going to do. You're going to change it. That person in that frickin' glass booth every hour is going to come out and stand in the middle of the waiting room and say, hi, my name is Steve. I'd like to know, can I help anybody with the form you're filling out? Can I answer any questions if you've never had an MRI before? Can I help you understand anything, help you with your form? Can you please let me know? Every hour that person is coming out of that damn glass booth and standing in front of everybody. I said, the second thing you're going to do is that person who walks out here and screams the name isn't going to do that. They're going to walk out, they're going to find you and they go, Mr. Harvill? And they'll go, hi, I'm Janet, and you're here for an MRI today. I'd like to take you back. We'll get you started on that. Have you had one before? Right to you personally. They'll walk you back. It takes no money. It doesn't cost anything. So we instill it in 37 offices. 4 months later, I go back to the same 7 offices that I visited across the country and sit there as a patient. How many of those offices were doing the new plan? 0. 0 offices doing it. So I call up the head company. I go, are you guys following up at all? I am. They're not accountable for it. So I went into the next one. When they didn't do it, I said, can I talk to the manager? And the manager comes out and goes, can I help you? And I said, yeah, let me ask you, why aren't you doing these 2 things, these 2 simple elements? And the guy goes, we just didn't, you know, it was something new, and da-da-da. And I said, yeah, I'm gonna recommend you get fired. And the guy goes, what? His next question was, who the F are you? He said, I designed this simple little plan. You're not doing it. You're held accountable for it. You've received all the information for it, and you're not doing it. So I'm going to go back and say, we need a new manager at this office. And he goes, no, we'll get on this. But I mean, that's the aspect of an idea that everybody agreed with that they're not doing. You have to be accountable to the idea. You have to be accountable to the criteria, because it's going to direct your action. That's kind of the deal on it, right? So let's talk about mining outside the mine. When I'm looking for relationship sales, people that I know, people that are friends, like I'll tell Craig after this, or the last time I said, if it was successful, who can I talk to? One of the companies we spent a lot of time with, we didn't end up doing anything with them, but your word and the work that I did initially got them really interested in doing something. It's that aspect of being just outside of your typical element. So one of the ideas is, when you look at that, how can I connect the people a little better? Right? So you have an idea. And it's going to connect to different people. And then this person, which you connect to, has the ability to connect to a different person, right? Has another one. So who said something about asking for references earlier? Somebody said they were asking for someone that you might be able to refer them from, right? That extends the outside the mine, because your mining only has this person. That's all your mining does. But that person, successful, mines to other people. So it's being able to get outside your specific mining aspect. And the only way you do that is as uncomfortable. If you're uncomfortable asking for references, you shouldn't, referrals, you shouldn't, because the person that's giving you the referral is happy with what they're doing. No one refers something they hate. No one says, oh, you got to go see this movie. It was the worst movie I saw this year. You go, why the hell would I go see the worst movie you saw this year? You know, they're not going to do that, right? On elements like that. They're going to do something that they feel connected to. So one of the things to look at as I'm building my filter, and you can take out, there's filters in your packet. Let me just also explain a couple of the other things that are in the packet to help you out there. Besides your index cards and a 8.5 by 11 sheet to draw on, you've got a couple other ones in here. One is you have a couple of blank decision filters, and I have one in here that's a decision filter we're using next week in Minneapolis that I'll share with you. So you've got a couple of those to scribble on. Then you have a scribble sheet. You have scribble sheets, right? Yeah. You know what this is for? So just scribble things on it, so that if something appeals to you, you can just write it down real fast. Scribble sheets are for writing things down real fast. Every idea that we use and develop, we start as a scribble sheet, where we're just listing ideas randomly. They have no order to anything. But that's what scribble sheets are for. They're for you to scribble ideas on, to sketch something on. That's why they're called scribble sheets, because they're for you to scribble on. We're kind of like astrophysicists. In astrophysics, we name everything for what it is. Black hole is a dark hole. Red giant is a red giant sun. Red dwarf is a smaller one than that. Everything has the name of what it is, except for dark matter and dark energy, which we don't know what they are yet.
For the record, any piece of paper for an architect is scribbled.
Exactly right. Yeah. If for us, I want to dictate its use. Maybe it's my simplified element, but I want people to know that that's what that's for. And in my company, everybody uses just the scribble sheets to jot stuff down on. And I've used it forever, just like an architect would use anything. It just tells me what it's for. There's an interesting aspect of the brain. Every day of the week, for me, has a theme of it. 5 days of the week, each day has a theme. Monday is financial. That doesn't mean I spend all my day Monday looking at numbers and elements like that. It just means that's the overall idea that I'm going to spend some time on a Monday. I know every Monday I'm going to look at cash flow. I know every Monday I'm going to look at contract status. That's just what I do on Mondays. On Tuesdays, I market. That means I send stuff out. I have a brand new program that we're just finishing designing on, so it'll go out on that. Wednesday's my writing day. I don't take phone calls. I don't look at email until 2 o'clock in the afternoon every Wednesday. I'm unavailable because when I write, I have to have total silence. I can't listen to music. I can't do anything. So Wednesday's a writing day. Thursday's my favorite day of the week. It's research and development. It's R&D. So if I have an idea that I scribble down, on Thursdays I go back and support the idea, or I do what's called collapsing the idea. The idea wasn't any good. I can't find a way to do it. It just gets parked somewhere else over there. And then Friday's catch-up day. We catch up for all the things that fell through the cracks. So I direct my time. I have intent about what's doing it. The scribble sheet is an intent sheet. It just is called that so that the intent of the sheet is in front of you. And it's worked real well for what we do. So what we're looking for, part of this is being able to identify the people that will lead us to people outside the standard mining aspect of what we're doing. So as you're going through, if you have an idea for a criteria, scribble it in on your criteria element. You know, there's already 3 or 4 I've heard that I would use as criteria for my approach that you've thrown out as ideas on it. That's what that's for. Now take a look at this sheet. This is a decision filter that the criteria was pre-selected for the participants. This is for the top 45 female financial advisors in America that are meeting in Minneapolis next week that I get to work with for a little while. We're going to use a decision filter. But this is for the one idea. They bring one idea to the meeting. All 45 of them bring a single idea. That's the criteria they run their idea through. The first one, is this idea really going to be worth it? Is it going to move the needle? How would we define it? The second one, is it innovative? Meaning, does it separate and differentiate ourselves? And the last one is, what are the major obstacles that we have to get through? So they'll spend an hour on this with their one idea, but I've given them the criteria already because we don't have very much time with them. The idea is, if it can't get through there, your main idea isn't going to get done. Don't do it. It's not worth your time and effort. And Valero has an unbelievable history of separation and differentiation, which I think should be a criteria on everybody's decision filter. It's that it is different. It's different than a Spurs game. It's different than the rodeo. It's different than, the Final Four, if you get another Final Four thing, but going to the Final Four is pretty cool. So, I mean, I have to give them. Yeah, are they going to do, you guys got it again? Yeah. The whole thing is here, the last...
Same weekend. Yeah, that's right, same weekend.
As the Valero Texas Open?
Yeah.
It took work to get it done.
Wow. Wow, that's challenging. Yeah, it would be like, it's like when Waste Management and the Super Bowl were in the same place. Was that 2 years ago or something almost there? Yeah, where they had the same element to it. But the Waste Management guys had a great year that year too, with people doing both, right? So there's a mechanism for that aspect of it. But that's, I think, one of the things that if I were to put on my filter, my first criteria was, how do I differentiate the VTO from anything else? What is a methodology of differentiation and separation, right? And that becomes one of the key points that I use when I approach somebody. We're different than all of that. I get that, and I know how much fun that is. But let me show you why this investment in that same kind of mentality is better, because it's different. And I would define what differentiates you. What is the differentiation and separation that the VTO has over other events? That would be a key criteria for me if I were doing this. I'd want to know how I attack that, right? So think about one of your views of this is, how can I get outside my mind? How many of you have sold a sponsorship at all? Has everybody in here sold one kind of a sponsorship at least? Not yet, right? So I'm sorry?
Yeah, bought many.
Rookies. Oh, yeah, new guys in it. It's okay. All things have a beginning. And beginnings are really fragile, by the way. Every time, and I'm jumping around just a little in context because of what you're saying, Efim. Every time you have had a success, that success should lead to additional successes, period, right? It's so, I cannot tell you how weird it is for me, the people that don't spend any time on what they do well. What's the chapter called? Don't waste good. Do you have any idea how many companies waste consistently success? And if you ask them, one of the guys that are in this book was worked for Magellan, sold robotic medical surgery machines. Long sales cycle, huge investments, gigantic. All right, every motion has a beginning. It is the nature of motion. The laws of Newton's laws still apply. Something in motion stays in motion, something until it's stopped, right? Everything that has a starting point has motion to it. And starting points are spectacularly fragile. They need a lot of thought process element, especially when your starting point is trust. And that's your starting point for your network. So let's write one criteria. I want everybody to write one criteria for taking a look at adding the 10 names we're looking for from each person. What is one criteria you would use? You can use it on the scribble sheet. You can write it actually on the element. You might want to scribble a couple because you may not have that one right off the top of your head on it. Give me one criteria, just one in the decision filter. Does somebody have one to share? It's all right, still working on it. You need to spend time on criteria, but we only have 3 hours together, a little less than 3 hours together. So does anybody have one to start with?
I had, does it add value to the prospect and are we able to articulate it? That's my first one.
So one of yours would be define value.
Yeah.
Does anyone have a broad one, a big broad base, like a 30,000 foot criteria that's just gigantic? You all? Resources?
They don't have money.
Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of what I had. Are they a decision maker or have access to a decision maker?
Like a lot of small businesses aren't gonna.
Yeah, they're not going to buy a tent, but they might buy a package, right? Yeah, like that. Isn't one of the let me ask you this. Of your sponsors, if I brought one of them in right now and I'd say, and I put 2 golf clubs in front of them, and one's a wedge and one's a driver, and I told them, pick up the driver. Would every sponsor be able to pick the driver up? Everyone? Yeah, right?
I wrote down golf, but at least knowledge of what you can do out there.
Yeah.
It was like the knowledge of what you can do out there.
Yeah, how many of the people that attend that are sponsors don't know anything about the game and come just to drink and eat? More than I think? Well, I know at Waste Management it's more than I think.
A lot of them. Are you saying the people they bring or
Yeah, probably the people that bring.
I would say not the person that they bring. The sponsor themselves all know golf. And they probably all,
they know the power of golf.
at a minimum, like golf, right? Most of them are players of the sport, right? I mean, I don't know anybody that likes golf that doesn't play. There may be out there, right?
Because that's important, because then their wheels start spinning about who their customers are, or their prospects are, that would enjoy this experience.
Yeah, I think that if I were to look at one 30,000 foot one, is they have to like golf. I mean, they have to be involved in golf in some way or another. How many people buy tickets? Let me ask you, let's say I'm an individual buying a ticket to come on Thursday or on Friday. I buy a ticket, I come, I park in wherever the parking is far away, I take a shuttle. I don't have any, I'm just walking around, right? Most of those people know golf, would you think?
I would say corporate sponsors definitely know golf. Somebody who has a grounds ticket, the number's probably not quite as high. It could be just more for the social.
Just for the, yeah.
I think Valero is unique too because of the charitable piece of it. There's a lot of people that are engaged that come out, they're doing it because of the charitable.
I think that's true too, and I think that's one of my criteria is community involvement. Can I connect the value of this person to what the good we do in San Antonio is? And if I'm writing, if I was hired to write your story, what you might call your pitch or whatever, I hate that term, basically because baseball, a pitch is trying to trick you. I don't want to be tricked by it. I just want to have that element. That story has a center value light bulb around community. And if I'm looking at an aspect of this, community is a gigantic one. And I would take every single sponsor I had to visit all the things that we come in contact with. I'd create a day of it. I'd take them to lunch. I'd have that person come with me to see the hospital, come with me. I don't know what the charities are. But come to me to see the impact that our money and dollar has in the community and that you are part of this, right? Another aspect of the story, I think, is painting the picture of what we call painting you. I want to paint you in the context of being here, of what this means. This is what you have done. So the sponsor has the sense of, I'm involved in this, I'm doing this, this is what we're doing, right? And they reward, and the element, they do that already because they use it as a reward for only two types of people, their team or their clients, or potential clients. Those are the only, the moving parts of this are very small, right? If I'm buying it as a support tool to my company, I'm only inviting two kinds of people probably, my team and people that are on my team and my clients. I don't know who else am I inviting? Nobody. Those are the only two invitees, right? And I need the team members are already there, even though I think you can leverage team members beyond the mining, outside the mine element too. But that big idea of bringing, of the support of the community, of the experience that you get, it's the selling point for the sponsorship, especially organizationally, if I'm selling an organization. Give me other, yeah.
So Trailblazers, we have our golf outing coming up, right? When we do our charity visit, should we find a nonprofit that has enough room to where would each Trailblazer want to bring a prospect to that event as well? Is there value in doing that?
Yeah,
I think
we're not taking, because part of that is taking time for us just to talk about Trailblazer
Right.
stuff too. So I feel like if you think we're okay with just not having that meeting and bringing a prospect and kind of getting rid of the Trailblazer meeting,
Yeah.
I feel like that would potentially be kind of a weird situation. But if it was just strictly a site visit, just to go see them,
Site visit to see it,
Yeah.
and see how their dollars are making a difference.
I've really appreciated whenever we've had some of the folks that
Right.
have been impacted by the event, even just present to us on the things that they're doing. I think
there's staggering leverage in that.
That fits into your community, that sells to sponsors, this is what you've done.
That's right. It makes it a you thing. And that's gigantic to people.
hey, maybe two birds, one stone. Maybe have them come out to the golf event after.
Yeah, and that was something that Shay Johnson had suggested. He didn't come up with a good idea, believe it or not. And so was maybe having a charity speaker, or just 5 or 10 minutes after our round of golf to share how the dollars that they've received from the Valero Texas Open have impacted the people they serve.
You were talking about individualizing elements based on the people, right? About having a filter that you almost have to individualize as you go through it unless you have large items in there. Anytime you can make it a you issue where you've done this, you're doing this, your involvement created this, and we can do that for so many other people if you'll give us a little help. Can you point us in the right direction that we can expand our impact element? That you thing is unbelievably powerful to an individual and an organization. And I'm sure you guys have all kinds of thank you stuff and leave behinds. That's another big deal, is an element of a leave behind. But if you can create criteria that are that large around the you, that's a separation and differentiation point, is that this is what your involvement has been. You have done this. You've made this happen. Your involvement has created for us a greater sense of community. That's the story I'm telling for a sponsorship element. If I'm creating a tool for that, right? What's the tool of sale? It's always story. It's never anything else. It's always story. It's the oldest strategy known to man. It's 60,000 years old, the use of telling story. And so that's, if I'm putting in my criteria, one of my criteria is you. Can I make this personal? Can I figure out a way to make that person feel that their involvement is so personal that it created benefits for these children that would never have had that without their involvement? Never. That's how stuff works. So from Brian talking about community and you, I add you as one of my filters. Can I make it personal? Can I figure out how to say your involvement? You did this. One of my clients has this great tradition that when they bring in their clients, at the end of the day, like it's one of those it's not a reward meeting really, but they all come to Minneapolis and they all go through this stuff, all the top customers. And at the end, every single employee in the building lines up on and every one of their customers walks through the lineup and everybody is thanking them by applauding. Everybody in the company. So there's 300 people in the building. There's 300 people lined up clapping as they go to the bus to leave. I always thought that was such a phenomenal you moment, right? This is about you. This is the trust I've built upon. So one of my criteria is make it about you as much as you can personalize it. This is the idea of a personal connection, right? And you have to keep it simple. You have to keep it simple. Do not allow a 5-point narrative to happen. No one listens past 3 points. All connections happen rapidly in simplicity. They are longer in complexity. The more complex it is, the harder the connection is to do. Lucas, in banking, you have a lot of criteria. It gets complicated. Does anybody sell finance? Is there a financial services professional? That's ridiculous. It's gotten more and more complicated every single year. They don't know what they're selling. And they're out there attempting to sell items to people. Make it as simple as you can. Here's what you get. You get this, this, and this is all built on you. That's another criteria I do. One of my criteria is, what can I do that makes it simple? Can I make it so simple that the idea just slithers through and out the bottom? And you can do that with the most complex issues. Have you ever listened to, do you know who, they're not, what are they called? Science storytellers, but they're famous scientists who dumb stuff down so that everybody can understand it. Neil deGrasse Tyson, Brian Cox, Brian Greene are physicists that do that, where they take the idea and they'll say, okay, let me explain this to you, and they get it down here and you go, oh, I get it, right? You know, in CERN, there's a super collider. Could have been in Waxahachie, which is where they originally started it before they shut the project down. We'd have been the center of physics in the universe, would have been the United States instead of France and Switzerland. It's 23 miles in circumference. It shoots protons at 99.99999% the speed of light. About 5 billion of them make the circle of 23 miles 11,000 times in 1 second around there. And then they collide them, and they take a picture of it, and they know what it was like at the moment of the birth of the universe, right? That's not that hard to get your head around. I mean, it's weird numbers. How can something go 11,000 times a second around 23 miles? Well, that's because the speed of light's pretty fast, right? You can explain elements like that. I need them to have value in that element. And when you're doing that, it's your personal connection that'll make that happen. Give me one more criteria. Spend some time writing a criteria, a second criteria. I want to be able to get, at the end, at 11:30, I want names. I'd like you to have some people you're thinking about. That's the object of the whole deal, right? I'd love to get 10 from each person. Just think about that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 80 new potential prospects. Even if you got 7, that's new ideas of people that you can utilize a tool to contact with, right? Give me a second criteria that somebody's worked on. Go ahead, Nate.
My second
if they have a military background?
Background, they support military, it's a part of our tournament.
I think that's especially in a military town, that's a pretty big deal. That's an unbelievable event. For an outsider like me to look at that, I always think, you got to be kidding me. You know, that there's that level of, and I've done a lot of work with the Air Force and the Navy on different strategy projects over the years. And I think that's, to me, that's like an unbelievable thing you guys do for that.
Well, I don't know if you were selected to do, I was at duty for a time, I went to the event that we selected to do.
I did a lot of tour.
Yeah, so you were always received, I mean, you walk in there and you feel, as a military person, you feel special about it.
You should. It's a special event.
It is. And what Craig and those folks have done for years, and then you see it, you go have you'll take a brand new young lieutenant or a young airman that walks in there, and this is for us. And they may not get it at first, but they eventually will.
Yeah, it's one of those things that if I'm saying I'm building community and I'm supporting that aspect of it, it's pretty hard for people not to be supportive of that. I mean, it's almost impossible for you not to be supportive of it. And I think that's part of the story. The idea is about leverage points, right? You're leveraging people that you know, and it's hard to do that. If you were selling life insurance and you had to sell to all your friends, you had to call every one of your friends up and say, do you guys have some time Thursday night? I'd like to come by and visit with you guys. About what? About an opportunity. And you'd say, oh my God, are you an Amway person? Someone might say, there's nothing wrong with Amway. I don't know. I don't think there's any. If you're a good Amway person, that's good. But it's yeah. It's where leverage occurs. Who knows who the father of mathematics is? Consider the father of mathematics. You all know the person, but you may not think of him that way. Or you know his name.
Thomas Edison.
No, way back. Pre-Euclid, huh? But you're in the, you got the right first letter. It's Archimedes. Archimedes is the father of modern mathematics. He was just this brilliant frickin' guy. But he created the concept of leverage. What does leverage actually mean, right? It means minimum effort, maximum return, right? So that I can use a fulcrum, I can lift a heavy thing, a little amount of effort, get a heavy thing off the ground. That's what leverage means. Minimum effort, maximum return. So that when you're looking at your network, you're looking at who is the minimum effort to give me the maximum return? How can I leverage minimum effort, maximum return? And you're leveraging those by the people you know in your relationships. You're not selling life insurance. That's a shitty thing. That's a bad job to have to do that to all your friends.
What about commercial insurance, though?
Good, much better.
That's better. You're better, Troy.
I do a lot of work in commercial insurance. It's way better. Yeah, it's not like you don't need it or you shouldn't have it if you've got a family and you're doing. It's not like that. It's just the methodology of leveraging all your friends right out of the gate in the training aspect, right? That's how New York Life does it anyway, on elements like that. These are things that they'll support. So if that other criteria should be, how can I define it within my network, right? What's my leverage point? My leverage point is I just need people, I need a minimum amount of effort to get a maximum return. People that like golf, people that have the resources, people that are decision makers. Those are all criteria that you run every one of your ideas through. Those are great criteria. Anybody else have another one that they've put in there? I know it's tough to do on the fly, but you need to be leveraging that aspect to be able to do that. If it's how do we grow, right? That's the key question. How do we grow?
I think another one that would be helpful would be a criteria would be who do you know that you know they like to host customers? They take them hunting, fishing.
They have events.
Whatever that events, spurs, whatever that is.
Client appreciation events. And you know how you can find that out? You can go in, and I'm sure that there's a way that the San Antonio Spurs can tell you every one of the groups that come and get their name on the board every night. On the big board every night that they brought people. I'm sure you could get that information there. I'm sure you could get it at the rodeo. Who are the people that are coming to get their name put up on the board? Tonight we'd like to welcome San Antonio Subaru, thanks for coming, everybody. And they stand up in the same color shirts or something, and they start cheering and yelling. That's a target. That's a target. They already do it. And those names, I mean, it doesn't matter what the event is. What are the biggest events here are Spurs, VTO, Rodeo. And what's the other one? Oh, the Fiesta Bowl. Oh, Fiesta, that's a big...
2 weeks of street parties.
Oh, 2 weeks of street parties. That's probably not as easy to leverage as the other two on it.
You'd be surprised at how much money is invested and spent on Fiesta.
On Fiesta, when is that?
April.
April.
It's like Mardi Gras without the debauchery.
Oh, well, then why go? I mean, the debauchery is... The debauchery is the big, that's the big pull. In my filter, that's my number one filter, debauchery. There are information streams that you can feed into your criteria, period, right? I mean, and there are people out there that aren't involved in VTO that need to be involved in VTO. Yeah. They need to be involved, and you need to get them involved. And part of your Trailblazer deal is to be able to do that, to identify a few of those people. Let me ask you this right now. Pull out your scribble sheet or a 5x8 index card and write down 3 names that come to mind right now. Just 3 names that that I can approach. Just 3. Not 10, 3. Where did those come from? From your work. From work. Where did yours come from? Work. People that you know from work. Irv, people you know. 3 people you know. Why would you approach them? Pick one of those and just tell me why.
Low-hanging fruit.
Low-hanging fruit. You know they have an interest in something. So let me ask you this. In approaching a VTO sponsor, what is low-hanging, what makes it low-hanging fruit for you?
He's already been out there. He wants to do more. He enjoys golf.
How many of the people, that's 3 very good criteria, by the way, on a decision filter. Those are 3 very good criteria. If you know they've been that makes it through, I would think anybody that makes it through those 3 criteria, you should be calling immediately, right? That's 3 very good criteria. Say them again.
He's already been out there.
Already been there once, or knows what it is.
Wants to do more, and he likes golf.
And he likes golf. And he would be an individual or representing an organization?
He would be an individual that has the decision-making ability
for the organization. So to do more.
Yeah.
That's a really good filter. I would put anybody through that filter. How many people have you taken out? What's the deal, Craig, on like prospecting at the tournament?
Yeah, I mean, that's always an option. Yeah, if there's somebody that's a highly valued target that we didn't close.
You could get in for a day.
Yeah.
How many of the people that you have, how many of you have signed 2 sponsors? At least 2. Let me ask you, had those 2 been to the event prior to sponsoring it? Yes? They had been to the event prior to sponsoring it. There's probably just a ton of strategic leverage in making that initial connection, right? But it's also giving away value, and you can't do too much of that on it. There's that, everybody's balancing value and price, right? No matter what you're doing. There's a ton of value in the experience, right? Because that's what earlier on when I asked you, what are you selling? 2 or 3 of you said we're selling the experience, right? Well, if they've had that experience, that sale should be a little easier, right? If not, your story, the story that you use in leverage should leverage the experience. What does it mean? What am I talking about? I'm building my story around that experience. Here's what you get. Here's what involved. Here's how you look at it. That's how I build my story around that, around what the experience is. And when you can take a person that's a potential to see a charitable person like you guys are thinking about doing, that's we used to call that heartstrings. That's a heartstring strategy, right? You're pulling on heartstrings. what's in people's heart on a way to contribute to the greater community.
See, I struggle a little bit with it. So most of my prospects are existing customers of mine.
At Frost.
At Frost. And I have to be very intentional with how I sell it because most of the times I've taken them. And when I sell it to them, they're like, well, what if I go with you? Why would I buy my own ticket? You take me. I'm like, well, you're always going to have a ticket with me. And we might not be in the same section, but think about the value that you and I have of spending 8 hours together. Think about if your sales guys could be doing that with their team.
That's a great, yeah, that's.
So when I first tried doing it, I kind of got some looks like,
why would I do that?
Selling to me. Like,
yeah.
We already have
this is a perk from me doing business with you.
Yeah, so I had to be, in the beginning I maybe didn't do it as clearly versus now when I'm talking about it, I said, hey, look, our tickets are always there. Like, you and I are always going to go together, but I wanted to share something with you that I think is really beneficial for your team. Maybe not for you personally, but for your team of sales guys. So that experience thought process is kind of difficult in that instance, where it's like, you've already been, and you're going to continue to go with me. But
yeah, you didn't use the past tense, how you went with me. It's in the past. We're moving forward here on elements like that. Those are prime people that would do it right from the benefit. I'm not talking about and you're using it exactly like you would want another sponsor to use it, right? I bought it so that I can bring my clients, I can show them something special. If you know companies that do that, and anybody that's in elite service sales, anybody
does that. That's how they reward their clients. They do all kinds of stuff like that. That would be another element of my criteria that I would build for that.
I'd like to kind of move from the criteria to what do I do when I have the names, all right? And so I'm going to skip to this part of it, the ideas. What am I using of mine to create this criteria
to get people? You're using your personal understanding, you're using their understanding of their business and the understanding of their relationships. So when you said that this person could connect me to here, connect me to there, those are the kind of things that you have to visually see. I cannot tell you how important it is for you guys to use the scribble sheets or whatever methodology you use to see things. And that means when I'm actually using the filter as a tool, I see it. I see the items that are in it, right? I see the relationship. I know this person can lead to this, this, and this. The ability for you to see it cements it in your head as a plan. Here's another interesting thing about the brain. It only has 5 highways. Everything that's ever in your head only travels on 5 limited highways. What are the 5 highways?
Senses?
Yeah, your senses. They're your senses. The touch, taste, and smell. Taste and smell are really interesting. We'll talk about that some other time. But the 2 big ones are your audio element and your visual element, right? And they're big. And when I'm building on this aspect, I'm thinking about this all the time. 7.5% of everything you take in, you hear. That's it. On a 100-yard football field, you're playing on 7.5 yards on hearing. If the phone is your primary tool, 7.5%. That's it. Now the rest of the senses are tiny, except for sight. Sight's gigantic. Sight is 87% of everything you've ever taken in your life and taken in visually. And you will continue to do that for the rest of your life. So if I'm planning on how to approach a person, I'm approaching them visually. And that's one of the leave behinds, whether, I don't know what you guys use for leave behinds, if it's a ball marker from BTO, but it's always important from any meeting you have to have a visual leave behind. And I don't know, I know you can't do hats and shirts, they're just too expensive to do. God, there was a shirt yesterday in the Pro Shop that was $181.
That was on sale.
A shirt, no, it was just 45% off.
Yeah.
I went, no, shirt. You know, I do okay, but I'm not spending $181 on a shirt. But there's there are leave behinds that connect that visual, right? That if I'm making it personal about their business, about their relationships, I want to give them something. I want them to have something. I want them to physically do it. My first book, and we were talking about leave behind books for your son, right? Of doing a self-published thing, that's a leave behind that connects back to it. What do you guys have that are cheap leave behinds? Like, can you do ball markers? What can I do that's a BTO leave behind?
Usually it's like hats.
Hats are pretty expensive.
Golf balls.
That's a ball marker. Do you have a date? To us an annual.
100th anniversary.
Yeah, it's a, you know what?
Like a ball marker with 2024 date on it.
That'd be good.
Yeah, you know what I'm thinking? You know what challenge coins are? You guys all know what challenge coins are, right? That is creating the Valero challenge coin, using it as a ball marker as a challenge coin. And if you can do it with the date on it, that leave behind is a nice deal for that person. You know, just want to say thank you for your time. You should flip it up in the air or elements like that. There should be a leave behind that connects to the relationship.
You know, I volunteered out there for years before Trailblazer, and every time I walk in the store, they give me a medallion that has the year on it with so slashed. You know, it's just something, and I've kept them all.
Yeah, I have every one of my challenge coins in all the military work that I've done. Every one that I've ever been given. I thought, you know, I wasn't in the military or anything, so they're very special. Those kind of things are special. If I'm asking you for a special relationship, I'd like to leave you with something a little special. Figure out how to do that. I think that's a big deal. The other thing is sometimes it's as simple as just asking. You would be shocked at how many, and this is why I'm a terrible salesperson, is I don't recognize the closing moment. I just want to keep talking. And someone would say, you need to take yes for an answer, is the classic line in sales, right? But sometimes it's just about asking. It's just as simple as a basic ask. Tell me what your approach is. Pick one of the names on your list of the three, and what's your approach to that name? Just pick one. Colin, give me one approach to a person's name.
John Chaplin.
Good, yeah, it can just be John. Yeah,
John David Chapel.
whose address is?
So he's a person I've known for 20 years who's worked at the same company, same industry, so he could buy to like that. A lot of people to say, this is something you need to do. If I were in your shoes now, what would I know? Here's how I employ this investment.
How when you're talking to that person, are you talking to them at a lunch? Are you talking to them on the phone? Or are you talking to them over a beer?
Coffee, common start.
Coffee. You're talking to them over coffee.
Yes.
So it's an in-person, face-to-face.
Yes.
How many of you guys on your initial points of contact are in-person, face-to-face? Yeah. That's you can't sell this kind of a thing without that aspect of it, right? And so that initial point of contact. How many of you have already had an initial point of contact with any of the three names on your list? You've already had one, already had a point of contact, already had one point of contact on it. Okay.
When you say that, I mean, because it's all business related, we've had a lot, but in your space specifically.
VTO point of contact. Yeah. A VTO point of contact, meaning your first approach to anybody on that list you've already had.
No.
So they're already in the pipeline.
Casually.
Huh? Casually, but they're pipeline people, right? They're not out of the blue. How many of you right now, just based on thinking about it, could expand your list of three? How many could add three more names right now? Adam. Write it down. Oh, you already did, so your list is 6.
We did the homework already. 7.
You did? Well, I didn't know if anybody did. I told Craig yesterday on the golf course, I said, if I was a Trailblazer, I would have had my 10 names done before I got here. And I would have just said, Steve, here's my 10 names, I got to go. And you would have had a 30-second meeting. You'd already be in the traffic jam that's every highway apparently in San Antonio. It took us a long time to get back yesterday. Even taking us, Siri took us the back roads for a ways before we had to jump on the bumper-to-bumper stuff. It's like that in every city in America. Oh, that's sad about it. I'm in every city in America. It's like that everywhere. Bottom. So you can expand your list to 6 pretty simply, right? So you guys all have 10 names. If you can expand to 6, you can expand to 10. You all have 10 names. Did anybody bring 10 names? You brought 9? That's almost 10. In my physics background, that's almost 10. How many right now have 6 names? And does everybody have 6? Smith, you got at least 60 people here.
Yeah.
Of potential people to talk to.
Can we just take the last 45 minutes and let everybody just call your blue call right now?
Yeah, that's right. And say if you need some help, say, Steve, come here, talk to this person. I'll talk to him. I don't even know him. I'll talk to him if we can build him a story.
That's kind of scary.
It is kind of scary. That's how fast you can think up your feet. Let me see if I can. You guys are. I'm going to skip a few things here since we're. Even though I created this beautiful stuff, I'm going to skip it. So you already know your whys. The desire to participate. How is it? Stalled. The ability to give back, shared connections. This is part 2, which is to create a process for doing this, right? If I'm building a story around this, it has really only 3 parts. The first part is, if I'm building a pitch that I need to open with, my first part is, what exactly is the VTO, right? What is this event? I would want to know what that is. And if I'm starting a conversation with you in a sales position, you're selling me, I want you to be able to tell me what that is. I don't want it to golf terms. You know, that's like saying I'm a financial advisor. I said, no, you're not. You're a tomorrow builder, right? You're building my tomorrows as a financial. You're not just a. That's a horrible thing to say because they're on every street corner you do. So I want to know what it is. I want to know, and I want you. You should be able to tell the story of what it is, right? The second thing I do when I build that along the same thing of building value in it. How is it different from some other things? What is it? How is it different? So it's separated. And this is not a difficult story to tell. It's just not. I don't know. And I'm sure you guys have a pitch book, right? Or a storybook that tells you what to say and stuff like that, right? Kinda.
Everybody kind of does their own.
Do you have a I would want the idea, big picture, but I'd want to be able to take that, like Lucas said, where you have to personalize it down, right? So that the story, I liked your little book, by the way, that you drew in my note when you sent me the copy of the thing. You drew a little book. It kind of looked like a book.
Yeah.
Kind of looked like a book. Just teasing.
And Steve, one thing that we didn't talk about was the fact that this group right here, some of them are very comfortable from taking the whole sales process from soup to nuts. But also a big part of it is just them making the introductions to our staff or to our full-time team and letting us run with it from there. So sometimes it's a combination based upon the relationships.
So you're the closer on, you would be the closer on some of that, your team.
Yes, sir. Sometimes.
How many of you people have done what Craig just described? Okay. So that you're building a list of people that they're providing the leads for. That's a really good thing to have, a pipeline like that. Okay, so anybody that builds a personal story says, what do I do? How am I different? What value do I bring? Those are the 3 building blocks of a sales story. What do I do? Someone asks you, what do you do? That opens the door to it, right? What do I do? Why am I involved in that? How is it different from everything else? That's a big deal. I want something that's separate and different. I want to be something that differentiates me from everybody else doing the same thing. Why does everybody do something the same way? Why on heaven and earth do airlines board the way they board? The way they board people. You know that that's not right, right? You guys have all flown, right? you've flown Southwest and you've flown American or Delta or you know that that's the worst way you can do it, right? If you watch American Airlines, they have boarding groups. Depending, if you're executive platinum, you're in one, and it goes down on the things like that. But everybody gets up out of their seat, crowds around the number of people getting in the plane until they can't walk past people. It's any human being would look at that and say, that's the wrong way to do this. There's a better way to do that, right? That's what you're looking for when you're trying to make a connection. You want to make a better way for that person to become involved. How can I facilitate that? I am the facilitator of their involvement. And if it's sending them to you to facilitate it, or if you're closing it, you're the facilitator of that involvement. And every person you bring to this table makes the VTO better. It makes it better. It makes it bigger. It makes it more important to the elements. You guys should all be doing that. You should be utilizing tools to build it better. And you should be utilizing story as your primary tool. And for every single time you tell that story, you should tell it better. People are unbelievably gifted storytellers. And even if they don't know what they're doing and they don't understand that stories have to have a beginning, and I know you've been in this, where you've talked to somebody that had a beginning to the story, and there was a middle, and they just don't know how to end it. It just goes on and on and on past ending points. All stories have beginning, middles, and end. All good stories have beginning, middle, and end. And they don't have to be in that order. You could be Quentin Tarantino and start with the middle at the beginning of the movie, and then put the end somewhere else and start at the very beginning of the movie. It doesn't matter. It's got to have those three pieces to it. That should be your primary tool. You should be developing VTO stories for every one of these people. And the impact of charity should be the driving element of it. How many people do you think are sponsors of VTO primarily because of the community impact?
Probably depends on the size of the customer, right? I would say maybe more of the Cabana stuff, it's more about the ticket, right? But maybe bigger sponsorships are more about the community impact and the getting their name out there.
I think our biggest customer does it for community impact.
Yeah.
Valero.
Yeah.
But I think there are some companies, they like that. That's the cherry on top.
But they're really there for their team members and their clients.
For their clients. And I think that's where we ask that question to find their buying motivation. What's important to them.
I think they each on the backside. They'll get the clients in there, whatever they're bringing out to entertain, and then on the backside they'll talk about what they've done to help the community. I think it's more like that.
I think we're constantly surprised at how little people think about the charitable impact of this golf.
Really?
And that is a drum that we try to beat as often and as loudly as we can, but it just, at some points, it just doesn't.
So what they're doing is
part of the 92.5% that they're not hearing.
Yeah.
Did you guys maybe and I don't know if we want to share this data, but if we had a prospect who had $100,000 sponsorship, how much of it is getting back to the nonprofits? And I mean, obviously, running a golf tournament is expensive, so it's probably not a huge chunk. But if it was something that was meaningful, maybe being able for us to have that knowledge.
Well, it kind of depends on which asset they choose.
But maybe is there like a broad number?
We can certainly provide you some stats. I mean, we do fair market value letters to everybody that spends with the golf tournament. They're getting their tax letters, a couple months after the tournament, showing what is tax deductible. So there's not a straight answer to that because every package is different, and obviously the hard costs associated with each asset is different. But
you can certainly give the 30,000-foot version, right? That says this is how much this year the Valero contributed to the things, right?
Yeah.
That number is readily available.
Totally. Yeah, $24 million to charity. That is.
That's front and center and everything else.
Yeah.
You guys gave $24 million last year alone?
Correct.
Yeah, I'm thinking more like a percentage, really.
I think it gets a little lost because it affects so many different charities. I mean, there's got to be 300 plus. Right?
Yeah, that's another thing that shocked me about that. Is how many.
And that number's so nebulous, 24 million. It's just like it's a massive. I mean, I lead with the block because I think we're the best, correct me if I'm wrong, throughout the whole tour.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like,
It should be front and center because that's a staggering number. I'll bet there isn't a single organization in San Antonio that gives more annually than the VTO does. Is that true? Do you know?
I believe it is true. So rodeo has been creeping closer. Fiesta's tough because they're all, individual, independent entities that kind of roll up into Fiesta. So that one's not really apples to apples. But Big Give. No, actually, even Big Give this past year gave like $6 million or something. Is all they raised. It wasn't that big. So yeah, I mean, you're probably right. I mean, if there's anybody that's more than us, there's only one. But I would.
I'll bet there isn't.
I agree.
I would think at that number, there isn't, and that number then makes you the largest contributor to the growth of the community charitably in the city of San Antonio. I don't know.
I think a lot of that gets attached to Valero, as it should. Valero's the one that makes it all happen, but it's hard to convey that to, like Servpro does a bunch of stuff with us, right? I mean, they have a bunch of advantage.
Who? I'm sorry, who? Servpro, the people who clean up messes?
Yeah, well, I don't know if they attach themselves to that charitable number. They just know that the Valero gives out 24 million, but
they don't think of themselves as contributing to that necessarily.
Yeah, I don't think it's what leads them to do it.
What leads Servpro to do it?
I think it's client engagement.
It's more client engagement.
Yeah.
But I do think if there was like a percentage, like a high-level percentage, like, hey, Servpro gives $200,000 or whatever for their hospitality package, 30% of that, 40% of the straight line goes to local charity.
Yeah.
I don't know what number, if it's better than that.
We can come up with some averages based on, hey, anybody that's spending north of $100,000 on average, X percentage is going to the charitable effort.
Just come up and say 50% of what you spend. Tell them to prove you're
Because I think it's for me something like, most of my prospects are just looking at it as customer and employee appreciation, and that's it. Like, I'll be honest, that's probably.
There's nothing wrong with that.
But if I can say, look, you can think of it as strictly an expense for business development, but I know that there's budgeting in your annual budget for charitable giving, and this covers both points. And this percentage of it goes towards that.
See, that's
so they can probably view it differently in their budget. I know at Frost, we look at it, we separate some of our expense annually between corporate expense and charitable giving. We see it as both, and we kind of internally figure out what that number is.
See, that's a great criteria to add to your decision filter too. The ability to connect those two things. Does that client have the ability to connect those two things?
Well, it depends on clients from this community too. Like a lot of our clients that I'll reach out to are clients not from here, right? So it's an opportunity to show them, like, hey, these are some cool things that we can do in this community. But as far as, okay, well, that's great, but I'm based out of Cleveland or something, right?
Oh,
and I do business here, but
so
like Frost is from San Antonio, right? So they're going to want to give back to San Antonio.
Yeah.
Right?
Whereas your people are just more about the experience.
Yeah. So
San Antonio's got a lot of that.
The what?
yeah, a lot of expats and a lot of just business who are just parked here, but their community is California.
Not a lot of headquarters.
Yeah,
here.
exactly.
How far away is the reach of the tournament? Is the reach in Dallas? Do you have a reach of the VTO in Dallas?
Talk about consumer or corporate?
Both. Let's talk about corporate first.
Corporate, you could say, yeah, probably.
I didn't hear what you said.
Down to corpus, probably, but then you talk about the Valero business community, that's close.
Yeah.
Dallas has a lot of competition for tournaments.
Correct.
Yeah, especially in the Nelson
Houston's got one.
Yeah.
Like that's my problem with my company. We're based out of Plano, and they have a lot.
The
they have
Nelson.
a lot out there, and so
Yeah.
I have a voice here, but
Once they start comparing fields, you're going to kill it.
Yeah, they had
keep going, keep growing.
Yeah, they needed to have embalmed Byron and have him just standing there as an embalmed greeter to keep the people coming after he passed away. It seemed that that tournament lost its glory on
That
it.
helped. I mean, that changing that up and stuff too for the Valero down here. So, I mean, anyway, my point to that though was it's the difference between buying a $10,000 cabana and a $63,000 suite. It's like, okay, I don't mind giving regionally, you know, cabana or something like that if it helps regionally, right? Because like for me, I'm bringing people within my community, people that I talk to every day, people show appreciation, but your $60,000, $100,000 sponsors, they're usually, you know, they're going to want to be in, you know, from the community.
Yeah.
It's not going to be someone coming from California.
Is that true of your major sponsors? Are they almost all San Antonio companies?
A lot of them are, or they have major presence.
Right.
You know, when you're
Valero business partners maybe.
Yeah, that's true.
And they get,
They mentioned the surfer deal. We started several years ago doing local franchises. It was a $1,000 ticket package. Well, a couple more franchises got involved. It got to the point where so many franchises got involved. They led Craig to reach out to corporate at Surfro, and now their corporation comes in. So you've got your local franchises, what, 5 to 7 now? Something like that? 10? 10. They contribute. They bring in their clients, and their corporation comes in. They're big, you know. They're folks from Nashville, right? Nashville, I guess. So, and they bring in that, so it's good.
Well, my small experience with the tournament as an attendee was that the client experience was as good as a sporting event could get. For me, I've been to tons of different things like that, but it was everything from the parking to, you know, when you look at stretching, where does it start? Where does the start of the experience go, right? It starts right away when you get the car, when you're in your car. Right, and that was handled so well, I thought, all through the process. And if I'm building story, I'm building story around that too. I think that if you spend a little time on criteria, Lucas and I were even talking about criteria using the decision filter at your regular job element on it. You'll find a methodology of accelerating who you want to talk to and how you want to talk to them. But the tool that you need is the tool of story, right? You need to be able to sit down and tell them the story. And that story you should be helped with that. You should have a story sheet, right? A one-pager that has, here are the key things to build into this and build it in this order, you know, elements like that, which I'd be happy to help you with. We do that for a lot of different companies. What is your, you know, people always tell you, what is your story? You know, if you look at, do you ever watch trials on YouTube? Has a channel that shows trials. I watch them quite often because I want to hear the opening and closing statements. I want to hear what is the story that the state is telling? What is the story the defense is telling? How good are the stories that are telling to affect 12 people who are sitting there trying to listen, right, as far as that goes? And they read from notes on their legal pads. They're not going up cold. They've prepared for it. I'm sure they put ideas through a filter of some kind that they did. That's the tool that you need to have. You need to have an outstanding story tool to build that story. You need to have leave-behinds, little things that make impact for people that they get for having a meeting with you or sitting down with you on elements like that to support that aspect of it. And you need to build the best story you can tell. And it needs to have all three. It needs to have, I get it, right? I can see where the value for me doing that is, right? And I can apply that to my company, my clients, my team members, all of those things. That's an investment I'll make if I get through that cycle. And I build my story around that cycle on it. And that's, those are the ideas that I think will help you approach that. Craig, are they going to give you their list of people? Is that the deal? Or are they just going to work their list?
They're on the honor system.
I would like, yeah, here's, you know how to build an accountability tree, right? Where you say, Colin, what was the name of the guy that you're going to approach? First name?
John.
John.
Jon.
Okay, here's John. First meeting, story, leave behind. When does the second contact happen? When do you think? Let's say this is first contact. You're sitting down with John over coffee. You're talking about the Valero, your involvement in it, why it's great for the community. That's first contact, or what we call POC, point of contact, first point of contact. Doesn't happen ever again. Never again. Happens only once. It's fragile. It needs to be strategically approached. Never happens a second time. It only happens once. So you've got the first one, right? And he said, oh, that's really interesting. What would John say to you? Would John say, can you get me some additional information? That's always a bad sign, isn't it, when people say that? Can I get some additional information on it? What happens after the first meeting? When's the next point of contact for you guys? You could.
Immediately after.
It's what?
Immediately after.
Immediately after.
Time today, appreciated the opportunity to share with you a little bit about the VTO.
So the same day or the next day they get something. Maybe it's an email. Maybe it should be a thank you card, handwritten. So my phase 2 is always a thank you card, handwritten, hand-drawn, hand whatever element that thanks them, that they get in the U.S. mail. And you know what happens when they get that right? You go to your mailbox and all of your letters are, they have a little window in them, and they say like, a little plastic window, and you look at that one, you look at that one. But when you get something that's a different size, that's handwritten, what gets opened first? The handwritten note, every time. Every time. So the second element should be something that thanks them immediately. That's what I would do. So my second element would be handwritten, personalized, not a frickin' email. Personal note. Are there personal note cards?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then the third element should be working towards the close, right? I would build those three right there, every single time. And that second one is really important. You need to personalize the secondary contact. You need to thank them because they've given you the gift of time, right? I build something around those contact points that happen right away then. First point of contact. Plan it. Make sure it's thought right. You don't get a second point of contact. Second one is personalize the response immediately. And that first one should have a leave behind every single time. Whether it's a ball marker or balls from the turn, it doesn't matter what it is. It needs a leave behind. The second one needs to be a personal note. The third one needs to say, what do we have to do to make this happen? Immediately. It doesn't take that much time to personalize something like that. It doesn't. My very first thing after I get back from every engagement are handwritten notes. Number one thing, gratitude. Number one. I won't look at anything. I won't send invoices. I won't do anything. I'll sit down and I'll sketch a specialized note back to the person. You've had a couple of those that I do. It's important that they know how grateful I am for everything that they've done. And if someone's really helped me, I'll send them Tiff's cookies or something. I'll send them something. Mostly not to the client, but mostly to the person that's helped me the most, that's like taking care of my hotel, that made sure the AV worked, that all of that stuff. They would get that immediately, no questions asked on stuff like that. And they will remember that every single time. Every single time they will remember that. That needs to be built as a strategy. I'm not talking about sales, I'm just talking about strategies, ideas that help finalize a sale or create a sale. Utilize some form for your thinking. I gave you, I don't care what it is. Maybe the filter doesn't fit you. It should, but maybe it doesn't. You need a form for your thinking, right? You need to sit down and think about it before you just pick up the phone or sit down with somebody. Be prepared. The legs feed the wolf. That's the section of preparation in the book, by the way, is be prepared for that, right? Those are the kind of things that'll I think, help you guys with the strategy around the sales end of things. And I would be happy to answer any questions or help you with anything or sign your books too.
So you were adamant about not emailing.
I'm adamant about not emailing. No, I'm not adamant about not emailing. I'm adamant about not emailing gratitude. I use email for in fact, that's probably the best way anybody ever contacts me or I contact anybody. But I would never use it for gratitude, ever. I would do something completely different for gratitude. And it's a big deal to me. I'm not a pencil, right? Where everybody uses a pencil and they go by. I'm different than that. And when someone uses me, they could have used anybody, right? So I am gigantic on the blessing of gratitude. I would never email gratitude. I would always do something completely different. We used to do hats. We've done a bunch of different things over the years that did it. And now it's just basically let somebody know that you are so grateful for them having chosen you or been involved in something. It's a big deal for me. And I'm not adamant against email. I love using email. I would just never use an email for gratitude, ever. I would never use it for an invitation. To invite somebody to something, I would never use an email as an invitation. People don't respond very often to it, and they wonder why people don't get involved. I don't do that. I have a much smaller scale than maybe some of you have, scale-wise. All ideas are just driven, decisions are scale, right? What's for dinner is different from where am I going on vacation to how do I build the Suez Canal. Those are different levels of decision-making on it. But I would never do that. I would personalize every single thing all the time on gratitude. These people should want to be involved in VTO. Once you tell them the story, they should be engaged in the story. And you should write your story so that it has a level of engagement in it.
Do you think that's a generational thing?
I do.
Because I'm wondering, because we're probably talking to a lot of younger folks now. And I look at my own children who can't even write. Literally, because they've been on the keyboard their whole life.
Yeah.
They cannot write.
When someone asks me what's the simplest way to differentiate or separate yourself, if you look at how email is divided, kind of your business, your promotional stuff, social stuff, the three elements Gmail kind of divides into if you're a Gmail user, and you go to promotions, and it's just every kind of thing you could think of that somehow got your email address, right? And it takes you an hour to clear it out every week or whatever. None of those things have any meaning to me. Even generationally, if I want to create meaning, I want to create meaning on a personal level. I want to be as personal as I can. And no matter what the generation is, when somebody gets a handwritten note, they open it. It's just natural. We just took a law firm who went from an hourly law rate, like they traditionally do, to a subscription service, where you pay this much, you get this many hours of service, and it goes like that. But the ultimate level, which is partner relationship, whereas if you're at this level, you get the partners in the firm. That invitation that goes out to those people goes out with a wax seal on the envelope, like Game of Thrones kind of thing, where you melt the wax, you put the wax on it, it goes in a special linen envelope, and they get it in their mailbox. They open that immediately. No one sees stuff like that anymore. And it's a method of separation and differentiation and message sending, on it. So we did it completely different, and they're doing great in their subscription service. One of the few law firms I know that uses a straight subscription service.
How do you see the integration of text messaging in relation to communicating? Because I find I'm doing more texting
Absolutely.
Than even emailing in some cases, and certainly depending on the relationship or the partner. And it feels like a more personalized way to communicate to somebody than
it is, but they would like that personalized delivery done in acronyms mostly. Yeah, they would just like a string of acronyms and a few emojis, and they'll be happy the rest of the day. That's true. We use texting a lot more than we've ever used. In fact, I would say a vast majority of people don't even want to talk on the phone. They just rather get a text message, which is definitely a generational element. They've lost the ability to communicate humanly, right? And now the human communication level has shifted and changed too. It doesn't change that much with me. I think it depends on the level of what I'm doing, right? If it's something quick and I just need, are we starting at 9? That might be a text message. But if it's relationship related, if it's related to the relationship, I will not do that. I will step away to make myself look different, no matter what it takes, no matter what it takes. I just need a small amount of separation from the way other people do it. I used to think it takes me a while to sketch a note, even though I'm a pretty good sketch noter. And then and to color it and to make it look really personal probably takes me a couple hours after every gig to do all of those notes, right? But I was recently in New York at a Morgan Stanley meeting, and I went into my contact at Morgan Stanley, and on the bulletin board in his office, he had half a dozen of my handwritten notes on the bulletin board. And I said, "What'd you keep those for?" And he said, in all my career, I've never seen anybody do this before. And I've kept them all. And I said, maybe it's worth that. Maybe it's worth the amount of time I do. I just can't think of doing business a different way.
I've started doing handwritten notes after we had a prospect that I went over about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And when you have a big customer like that come in, sometimes we're both kind of selling to each other. They're obviously wanting to show their best self to the bank, and we're also know we're competing. And we went out to their office. It was me and a couple of credit officers and our chief banking officer and one of our analysts. There was like 7 or 8 of us. And this customer wrote everyone from our president of the bank down to our analyst handwritten notes. And after that meeting, we decided to move forward and the whole deal went through. But he wrote my 21-year-old analyst a handwritten note all the way up to our president, and it got around the whole group that they did that. And we talked about filters and character.
Right.
Always the first one. We just thought really highly of them, and it showed fruitful since then. I mean, they've been a very transparent and kind-hearted customer. And it was something that I've never had happen. And based off that, I've done it. I don't have very good handwriting, so it's usually short and sweet, but still.
When I was just a kid, my very first client for Creative Ventures was the Disney company. And they came after I did a stage presentation somewhere, and they said, "Can you come and do that for us at one of our projects?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "How much do you charge for that?" And I went, "You can charge for that? What?" And it was the birth of the business. It was the birth of the business. And in order to get me to say yes, I got a handwritten note from Disney with the classic Mickey profile, and then a Mickey Mouse pin, like the pins they trade at the parks. I don't know if you guys know the pin trading field is gigantic. And it came with the mouse pin done on the inside, and I looked at that and I said, "Oh, I'm doing this for all my customers from now on." And it was from that moment, that was 43 years ago, that I've done everything I can do in that handwritten element to make that emotional connection from it. I can't stress it enough to you. I cannot tell you the impact it has for spending, if you don't know how to draw, we're going to do that a little later, but it's just such a different thing to get. I don't receive handwritten notes from hardly anybody anymore. Do I receive them? But I send them out like crazy. I go through packs of them, all a different size, a special size, so that they don't look like anything else when you get it. It's just a big deal to me. And it cements it. And if you do a little leave behind with those kinds of things, maybe your leave behind is 2 of them. Maybe the point of contact leave behind, and then the first note gets something. I don't know. Those are things that'll make it different to you. You just need to have an approach. That's all it takes, is just a strategy. What works best for you? How simple can I make it? Can I make it so simple that when it comes in, I've already got my filter, I just run it through, I know this person's not a prospect right now. They may be later, maybe I send them a note or something, but they're not going to be active right now. You can recognize that. It just should be strategic. I don't get how people do all kinds of things with no plan in sight, just the way we've always done it, the way we've done it. They haven't thought about anything yet. They don't even know how to think about it, yet alone think about it. If you're dictated by mindsets, everything you do is based on a mindset you have. And there's a lot of them. The major one are growth and fixed, right? Growth mindset, I'm going to try new things, I'm going to experiment. Fixed, I stay kind of where I am on it. But there are 3 mindsets that make a huge difference. The first one is the creative mindset, like handwritten notes. That's the ability to use what you genetically have programmed in your DNA. You're a creative creature by nature. You may not be a painter, a poet, or anything like that, but every single person has a massive amount of creativity in it. So they think creatively. Like all the stuff we've talked about today is thinking creatively. The second is willingness mindset. I'm willing to try this. I've put my ego aside. I'm willing to try this. I may not be any good at it, but I'm willing to try it. It allows you to increase your sphere of influence. And the last one is a simplicity mindset. Is this as simple as I can make it? without losing value? Can I make it any more simple? Can I remove this from it that I don't need it? We do an exercise when we teach simplicity where we give everybody a TV remote. And we say, you have 15 minutes to design a better remote than the traditional. You know, your traditional TV remote has 42 buttons on it. That's the traditional remote, of which you use 7. So there's basically close to 38 that you don't ever use. You don't even know what they do. There's like a green button, a yellow button, and a red button that you have no idea what those do. If you hit the wrong button, you're punished by your television. It'll punish you. You'll see something on the screen you've never seen before. You won't know what to do. You'll have to turn it off and start again on it. They're horribly designed. If you give it to a regular person and you just say, make it better, the first thing they'll do is they'll say, it's going to be voice command. It's just going to be a little thing you hold in your hand. I said, really, have you ever used a voice command thing that's totally voice command? See how it works? It doesn't work worth a damn. You know, secondly, they go, oh, we'll put a little wheel in it like Apple originally did. I said, how do I, if ESPN is 406 and Disney is 3, how do I get to 406? Do I have to scroll your little wheel through 400 different things? That's a bad design, right? It needs to be as simple as possible. Those 3 mindsets, the creative mindset, the willingness mindset, and the simplicity mindset, are the 3 mindsets that allow a career to grow. They are very specific on what they do. Your willingness to learn something new means you have to put something aside to do that. I came back from, I was in New York before COVID. I was sitting in my hotel room watching YouTube, just watching YouTube videos. And this guy named John Beckley pops up. Never heard of him before. He's an abstract artist, very famous in France. And his video took you through how he went from a blank canvas to a canvas that sold for $25,000. And I watched 5 of them in a row. They were about 30 minutes each or 20 minutes each. And I watched him do this, and at the end of it, my thought process, because I have a very strong willingness mindset, was, I could do that. I could do what he's doing. It's just an imaginative use of color and shape. So I went home, took a huge hunk of my garage, turned it into an art studio, bought paint and canvases and all sorts of stuff. And it was during COVID, so I had time, right? I went down and I started doing acrylic abstract paintings. And I would take them up to Laura and I would say, what do you think of this one? And she goes, that's horrible. That's not going to, just go put that back, paint over it and do something else. I said, got it. So I'd paint over it. So I've probably done 150 canvases, and 4 of my canvases are upstairs in the living room, made the house. So 4 of 150 were good enough that Laura said I would hang that in the house, right? But I didn't know what I was doing. I was just willing to try stuff. My new one is spray paint planets. Have you seen those spray paint artists that use the spray? And the next thing you know, they have like a universe, planets and stuff like that. That's my new thing. I'm doing spray paint universe stuff on it. But you just have to be willing to do it. I think you guys have a phenomenal amount of untapped potential to approach these people with a reasonable strategy. If I had a reasonable strategy, you could approach a ton of new people to make the Valero stronger. And in all honesty, that's part of your job. It's part of your job as a trailblazer. I don't know if any of this helped you at all. But I will tell you this, that a little shift, a little movement has great impact on things. It's incremental improvement. It's gigantic in its effectiveness. And I appreciate the opportunity. I know we had a little smaller crowd than we hoped for, but the input that you brought helped everybody see things differently. And I appreciate the opportunity to visit about strategy, about how to approach it, about what to drive home, about things that you need to have. You should, we can create all kinds of little templates that are helpful. Just fill in the blanks. Make sure that you've done that. I want to know what your 3 points of contact were. How did they go? Were they good? Did they work? Were they shitty? Can I repeat that? Can another guy here, if I did something successful, could I share it with somebody else and they could use it? That's how ideas develop value, is shared elements to it on it. So thank you. And I would be happy to sign anybody that wants actually to have their book signed. I would be glad to sign the book. And we will do a follow-up from this. You'll get a follow-up summary of all of this stuff I'll create for you.
Steve, I'll say I've been creating for 15 years now, and I tell you, this is probably one of the best presentations
Wow.
I appreciate it. I know he does.
Craig, the price has just increased. Just thought I'd let you know.
Never mind, you suck.
I'm so easy, you know. Craig came in this morning, gave me a hat, and I went, "Oh, that's a beautiful hat. That's a fantastic hat." I'm very simple on stuff.
All right, Steve, thank you so much.
Let me sign anybody's book that wants it, and